welcome to RCR Reviews. I'm your host, Kevin Lamont, and I'm joined by Taye.
Hello, everyone.
This is the opening weekend of probably, I can at least say it for myself, probably my favorite Marvel superhero movie to date, Black Panther. This movie has done so many things that we can't have just one single podcast about it. Like, we got to break down this podcast into like multiple parts, focusing on different things. Like, if you were to check our feed on SoundCloud and iTunes, you already see the first thing where we talked about the influences from the comic. Today, we're going to focus in on another aspect. And I'm going to pass it off to Taye to introduce the topic, and then we'll get into it.
All right. So when I was approached about what we should talk about today, I immediately thought of the things that were going through my mind as I was watching Black Panther. So let us get into, and I don't know if you guys saw it, that's why we're going to discuss it, how Wakanda could be seen as an allegory for America. So you have this country, Wakanda, who is extremely technologically advanced. They have all of these weapons, this medical engineering that can heal someone nearly instantly. I mean, they are worlds beyond what we see. And that's why they keep themselves hidden, because they don't want that power, that technology to fall into the wrong hands. I mean, we see what's going on with that now with North Korea, heaven forbid. But there was one part where King T'Challa says, it's not our business to police the rest of the world. And that really struck me, because a lot of people, there are people who believe that as a superpower, that's the United States is a superpower. They do believe that it is our job to police the rest of the world. And then you have people like me who believe it's not. You know, we've rushed into several wars where it didn't really involve us, but we rushed in anyway. So that really made me, with the technology, with the medical advancements, and with that statement, it really made me stop and go, is America seen as a city on the hill where we have all this tech? Should we be sharing it? Thoughts?
You know, I agree with you, because I don't think that we have the right to police the world. You're right. We are allegory for America. We do have the right to help people in the world, in my opinion. Like, where we pretty much we give back technological like advances like medicine or things like that. That part of Killmonger's argument, I did absolutely agree with. Again, we have slight spoilers in this one, slight. And I agree that because we are a superpower, we do have some responsibilities. I do not believe that war is always the answer, but technological stuff should be. In the movie, they had a device that could heal you. You had a damaged spine. I feel like America, there are some responses we have as superpower to give aid to people. Now, aid doesn't have to be guns or weapons. It could be medicine, food, things like that. They have the power to literally change the world like we do. I think it was a reflection of us using what we have amassed, whether we've amassed it through good means or bad means. Because in Wakanda, they had their history, and in their history, there were some bad spots where they didn't help their fellow Africans, and that's part of a nation's history. We have our very dark history ourselves. You can't always look toward, like, you should never forget the past, but you should use the past as an example on how to work in the future. In the past, they didn't help their brothers and sisters around the world, and it came back to bite them with Killmonger. I think that as America, we should do the same. I think that there was a message hidden in there, a gem, if you will, that we don't have to use weapons, because Killmonger wanted to take over the world. As a lot of people think that America should just take over the world, police here and there, and I don't agree. We shouldn't do that, because that's not, you're taking away people's freedom, and everyone has a right to choose. You should never take away someone's right to choose, to defend their own borders, things like that. But that being said, they did have a way that I don't want to say definitively, but had a good chance. It has a good chance of actually just helping everyone. And that's giving aid, medicine, technology. They can literally make people who can't walk. And I think they have that responsibility. And that's my beginning take on that. Kevin, what you think?
I think like that's pretty good, Tay. Like you're like I honestly didn't see that side of the movie like when it came out. So and it's giving me pause. Like I because going through the movie, watching it, I'm like, yeah, Killmonger, he's that dude. He's absolutely right. I mean, I'm not going to say he's absolutely right. Like, one of the things I liked about the movie was both Black Panther and Killmonger were both right and both wrong in absolutely definitive ways. Like, Black Panther was definitely wrong on this, but he was definitely right on that. And Killmonger was the polar opposite. And I love that. It adds to the complexity of the movie, adds to the, it prompted this discussion. But as far as like, giving aid versus, shoving yourself into other people's business, like that's really powerful. And in a way, like I know it's easy to say, if we have the ability to help heal people, sure, we should help heal people, but there there's a lot more nuance to it than that. Like again, America is always criticized by pretty much everyone that's not American that nobody wants them interfering with their business. Like that's part of the reason why North Korea is North Korea that it is today. It's like I see America doing this. Let's try and arm ourselves with all these nukes and everything, and just in case. I mean, they got all this power. All they gotta do is turn on us. I mean, it's the classic Lex Luthor versus Superman argument. So for Wakanda, like that same thing could be looked at it with them. Like if the world knew how far advanced Wakanda was, would the rest of the world been okay with that? Like at all? Would the rest of the world been like, hey, you got to share, otherwise we're going to come and do what we can to make sure you forcefully share, or should we find a way to keep you isolated? And I think that's part of the reason why they stayed isolated. Like they wanted to keep influences from the outside world away because the outside world was kind of falling apart. Like you see, slavery, slave trade, colonialization, and all of that. So obviously, if they have the ability to not be a part of that, they're going to choose not to be a part of that. But on that same token, like they know they are the best. And because they know they are the best, people don't like it when people don't like that clear distinction when they see you as the best. Like everyone, anytime we pump up these celebrities, athletes, and all that, we love them on their come up. But once they're there, the go-to thing is always trying to tear them down. So for Wakanda to look at themselves and definitively say, yeah, this isn't just ego talking, this is us actually being the best. Should we definitely go into the world and try and make it better, or should we stay away because the world's not ready for us to at least make that attempt? Because in doing so, we'd be unveiling ourselves as righteous savior. And, I don't know. I like this topic. It has a lot of nuance and thought to it. So, yeah.
I mean, you're right. It does have a lot to it, and I like that. The fact that there's no straightforward answer. All the answers are complicated, and no answer is truly wrong. If you really think about it, no answer is really wrong, and that adds a lot of depth to it. Because now that you guys have said that, I'm trying to think, and I don't know. If I was the country, I don't know. Because, okay, you know me. I love Killmonger. Not just because he was a good villain, but I felt for him. Because he to me symbolized the people that we abandoned, the people who slipped through the cracks. His father was the same way. His father tried to, again, his father's motivation wasn't what he wanted to do, what he wanted to accomplish. Like why he did it was better than what he did. He wanted to take the vibranium and make weapons to lead uprisings to, help Black people in America. For that, I applaud him. He wanted to help. I mean, that's part of applauding. And that's what he wanted to do. And I feel like the father, T'Chaka, should have they should have spoken about it. They should have had words about it. But then it comes that contract of tradition. And even in America, tradition is a big aspect of our country. It's huge. That's why we have so many protests and demonstrations, because tradition, it's new age versus tradition. Yeah, that's the age old thing in America. It's what happened back in the day versus what's now. And I saw that when those two faced off, the fathers, they both wanted what was best they both wanted what's in their eyes the best. One wanted to arm and help all Black people around the world, but it would have been a war. The other one would rather, turn a blind eye to it. to protect his own people. They both had inklings of what's right. Like, both of them had good points. I ultimately, like you said earlier, I think not only T'Challa and Killmonger had right and wrong points, I think the fathers had right and wrong points too. And I like that parallel. And it spoke volumes to me that the father had to kill the other father and the son had to kill the other son. So it was like, that was a good parallel to me as well.
Oh, okay. It's interesting that you said that. Looking at the fathers and the sons, and as you're talking about Killmonger, I had a thought. I think one of the ways, especially with the glorious Michael B. Jordan, the thing that Killmonger, because obviously Killmonger is much different than he is in the comics, but I like in this universe, in this iteration, Killmonger, what he symbolized to me, and I probably should, I'm just gonna go with it. He symbolized to me kind of the simmering black rage, as in, like you said, the ones that have been left behind. And that kind of ties in with my second point, where it's like we still have those lingering effects of the legacy of slavery, where yes, we've pulled ourselves up so far, and we try, but there are systems in place that still keep us down. And that's the reality of it. And I actually heard somebody in the theater go like, is he just angry because he was left? It was just like,
Wow.
one, like it's you have the anger that he has of having his father killed, knowing that he was left behind by family, because there are many Black families where, and you hear it, how many boys grow up fatherless, and people wonder from the outside looking in, like when we march, when we protest, sadly, when we riot, they wonder why we're so angry. Like that person in the theater, I just don't understand why he's so angry. And I think that was a glorious illustration of it, with all of the frustrations that we as a people feel and what his motivations were. And I think I like that they were more than personal, but you have that interwoven. And I think that really, the duality of the characters really symbolizes, who was it? There was a poet where he wrote that the Black man always has to be two people. Like, he has to constantly hide his rage for what he faces on a day-to-day. And then here you have it out in the open, and people don't understand where it's coming from.
I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right, because I see it all the time. Personally, I remember a couple years back, I had, obviously I've said it on the show before, and you guys know that I'm adopted, right? So for years, that got to me, and it did actually make me angry. I'm not an angry person, but it made me angry. It made me feel, like you said, forgotten, left behind, discarded, if you will. Here, he had not only did he have a nation leave him behind, like with Africa, like a nation leave him behind and never say anything about them being gone, but his literal blood not only forgot about him, but covered up that he was ever born. Like, that's what they did. The throne said, this guy never existed. My brother he's either still there. They didn't really say if he was still there or he died, but they cast him aside and buried him to protect their home. Imagine being tossed out of your home and kicked out of your family and then purposely forgotten. That would, oh man. As somebody who, I know the circumstances of why I was put up for adoption, and that makes me angry. If I knew that I was given up on purpose to cover up, to not shame somebody, I would be furious. I would have absolutely gone the way that he went, where he was, because what he do is, a lot of times we overcompensate. When we have that rage, we overcompensate. If we are not heard, we do something to be heard. With him, he was tossed out by the royal family. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come back. I'm going to take the royal family, and I'm going to help all the people that they haven't helped. Now, the method which he was going about it is arguably not a good method. I don't think it was a good method. But there can be an argument made for it. But it's his backlash. He felt that he was forsaken by his people and what they did was wrong, which he's right on both of those points. His response to that is to do something irrational and try to declare war on everything because he believes that this swift action will usher in a new era for all the people who are tossed aside can be either redeemed or brought home, if you will. So it's him trying to overcompensate, in my opinion. I think that's what it is. But you're absolutely right on all your points. Kevin, what you think?
Oh yeah, like I definitely understand where he's coming from, and that's what makes him such a motivational, such a relatable and almost likable villain. Like he's far and away my favorite villain in the entire MCU, and I mean, outside of like Loki, outside of Loki and Hela, there isn't much in the way of villains from the MCU. Like you have to go back into the TV shows and I mean the TV shows definitely had some stuff like Wilson Fisk and Kingpin, Copperhead and Luke Cage, and looking like Black Mariah is going to be shaping up as another amazing villain in Luke Cage and I guess Agents of Shield, like each villain in there. But I mean those are the TV shows, and as far as the MCU is concerned, they still get left behind. So all we got are these movies, and it's really just Loki and Hela right now. And Killmonger, to me, just shot past them because he was compelling. Like you, in just those 2 hours of the Black Panther movie, you saw where he came from, why he was doing it, and why he had a point. That said, he was still definitely a villain, like far and away. There was no denying his actions were villainous. And I mean, you could talk about, his methods were misguided and all that, but he was definitely villainous. Like the way he treated, I mean, just the way he got there, like his whole reason, like his whole methodology was, I'm going to kill as many people just so I can get good at killing, so I can eventually come back and kill the throne. And I mean, it doesn't get any more vile than that. Like he took the colonizers' mentality, and he said this on stream. He took the colonizers' mentality, learned from them, made it better, adapted it to his reasoning, and came in, carried it out. But again, that backstory gave him a very good reason to do that. So I mean, I want to say Killmonger was right, but I can't say he was right for that reason.
And now I have a comment about that. My comment I would have to say about that particular thing is that I agree with you. He can't be a full-on good guy because his methods were wrong. But we have to touch on the fact that BP, Black Panther, he also had some moments that were questionable because he, for example, my biggest moment where I was like, okay, dude, you can't do that. That's absolutely straight up dirty. He was going to throw Killmonger in jail when he showed up, when Killmonger's like, hey, he returned home. He was like, this is my family. Yes, he's done some villainous things. But up until this point, they honestly didn't know what terrible things he had done. Like, they knew his laundry list of killing and stuff. And there's an argument for that. But he had done nothing wrong to them. He was there to see his family. And BP was going to straight up throw him in jail so that the secret stayed. He wanted to protect the secret that, this guy... Because remember, he didn't tell the council. He didn't tell his mother. He didn't tell anybody. He was not going to tell anyone that this man was family because it was his father's secret. He hung on to tradition. And to me, that's terrible. He cast off his brother and denied him. It's to me, it's mirroring Black people in America where, like, the Black people who have made it in life as opposed to ones who haven't. And they're not even looking, the ones who haven't, aka Killmonger, they're not even looking, or well, at least originally when he showed up, they're not looking to take everything. They're here to at least speak. They want to be at least spoken to. They want to at least hear something. Because up until this point, we didn't know what Killmonger wanted. He didn't say he wanted to overthrow the government. He didn't say any of these things. I honestly, personally believe he wanted to take everything when he got shunned off. This rejection increased his anger toward them. Because I show up, I see my cousin, I see my family, I see the life I could have had, and I show up, hey man, this is me. This is who I am. And the first response is my cousin, my family was like, throw him away, get him out of my sight. And then he said, well, who am I? Look at it like this. He's like saying, who am I? Am I your brother? Who am I? And they were like, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Black Panther, and I could be wrong. He said something to the tune of "You're either nobody or you're some killer." Like he pretty much labeled him, like a lot of high class black people do now. But they label somebody without because of what they've done, as opposed to getting to know them. And he cast them out again. He's tossed out again. Instead of his father being tossed out and killed, his own family, his familia was like, "Be gone, lock him up," and that increased his rage. I'll be honest. I'll be the first person to tell you. Killmonger, I sympathize with. Black Panther had me angry majority of the movie. I was ticked off at him because, yes, I believe words can fix a lot of situations. For the first half of the movie, he did not try diplomacy with this guy, with these situations, and it's because he was inexperienced, because he's lived a privileged life, all this good stuff. He didn't know how to relate to these people who had nothing. Killmonger is the perfect example of a man who has nothing, who tried to gain something. Yes, he is angry. Yes, he has, he's not the straight up hero. I do not agree that he's a straight up hero, but I don't think he's a whole villain. I think both him and Black Panther are 50-50. They're both equally bad and equally good because they both had things they did that I can clap for. And they also had moments where it's like, you shouldn't have done that. That's just my take on that. So, Taye, what do you think?
Well, and to talk about the MCU part of it, I think that's one of the things that Marvel has done extremely well that DC wishes it could do in its movies, where you have flawed heroes in each movie. You have, Tony Stark, who's made questionable decisions. You have Captain America, who's made questionable decisions. And I mean, you definitely see that in Civil War, where Cap didn't tell Tony that Bucky was the one who killed his parents, because he was trying to protect Tony. So, and the thing that Marvel has done well is they do have complex, sympathetic villains. Like, I could understand, like in Thor Ragnarok, I could understand why Hela was so pissed off. It's like, my father cast me aside and then lied to everybody about me. So even I was conflicted watching Killmonger, because I would sit there and just be like, I mean, I get it, but you didn't have to put your hands on people like that. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, I think that's one of the strengths Marvel has, is that they give you whole complex characters to where you can sympathize with a villain and be enraged at the hero. And I think that makes for an awesome movie going experience. It's not just flat, because you're sitting there the whole time like, well, no, I get what they're saying. Why'd you do that? And I personally love that, especially with a movie like this, where it means so much to us, and you see some of the conflicts in yourself reflected on screen. And me as as a woman watching that one scene between Nakia and Okoye, where Nakia was like, I want to flee, and Okoye was like, no, I am loyal to the throne. It goes back to something you said, Jason, where it's, do we move forward ahead or do we hold on to tradition? That was a perfect illustration of that. And I think that's another internal struggle that we as a people have. And I really do love the way that was illustrated. Thoughts?
I'm absolutely with you on that, because this movie did really it did emphasize the need for what's more important, tradition or moving forward. I'm of the sound mind, and I guess people can at me, what have you, but I'm always been the side of, I'm not a fan of tradition, because tradition doesn't leave room for anything new. It stagnates you, and in this movie you can tell a lot of people who had hangups with anything that happened to Killmonger or happened around Black Panther. If you've noticed, a lot of them were tradition things, because they weren't progressive. Because their tradition they would cast out, or they would forsake people, or this, and their traditions created Killmonger. Their traditions created these issues. Their traditions created the divide between, I can't remember their names, but the people who lived in the snow mountains, like, because their whole thing is, remember, even the guy said it. He said, I don't even know what happened to why we live here. We just do. It's tradition. And that's a problem. We have people who are enemies because they just always been enemies. And I think that's a big moment that's a huge moment in the movie that I wish they spent a little more time on it, but it's fine. It was a transition scene anyway, so it didn't mean too much. But I like the fact that this guy had no reason to really hate T'Challa. It's just for thousands of years, like he said, for thousands of years, no king has stepped foot in here. But it's part of your nation. That's crazy to me, but that's a tradition thing. It's even in a society where it's all black people, tradition was holding them back. It did not allow them to be unified. Because one thing that's interesting, like relating to America, is yes, this is a powerful nation like America. But even still, in their power, in their prestige, in their money, and all this good stuff, they're still not united. So they're not. They're still divided. Divided as always. They're divided as just any other country. Like in America, we have pockets of America that are separate culturally, economically. And even in this fictional country, it's the same thing. They've got a whole section of the country that when they show up, if you looked at the faces of the other kings and tribes, they were disgusted by them. They were like, how are these people in our nation? And what are they doing at our challenge? They didn't want them to be there. The fact that they were not invited to this ceremony that always happens when we're crowning a new king. A whole fifth of your nation is not invited because you don't think that they deserve to be here. It speaks volumes. Kevin?
Yeah, so all this discussion, it just completely cements the reason why this movie, I think, is far and away the best movie Marvel has put together to date. And I honestly don't see anything topping it for a long time. And that's with me knowing Infinity War is on the way. Because, Infinity War, like all the hype built around that, like, it's going to be action, it's going to be like all these heroes coming together. It's going to be magical, great, just like Star Wars, just like whatever blockbuster movie film that has a huge fandom. Like, I'm definitely hyped for Infinity War, but I don't see it topping Black Panther just because this movie did something that no other Marvel movie did, and that was like literally like it spoke to the culture, like not just one aspect of the culture, but all the worldwide Pan-African diaspora. Like it, and like these discussions about Black Panther and Killmonger, all valid, all great. Well, I'm not going to say all great. There are some really hot takes that are kind of definitely off base, but I mean, something this big, you're going to get those anyway. But for the ones that actually have this back and forth that we're having right now, it's great. And I guess the only thing that I have to add on to it is, again, to the movie's amazing credit, Black Panther and Killmonger weren't the only characters in this movie. And I mean that, like, not just, body count wise, but I mean, they weren't the only fully fledged out characters in this movie. Like, they were among many. Like, going with Killmonger's rationale of, why aren't we helping the rest of the world? Nakia was the first one who did that. And she was in like probably the first 15 minutes of the movie. Like, that was her mission, trying to help her people in Africa. That's the way she was going about it. And she was fully fledged out, developed, and you got that aspect of her story as well. So the next podcast, or one of the podcast parts in this, is definitely going to break down at least, probably, I'd say there were at least like 6 full-fledged out characters in this movie that are all worth their shine. So we're going to definitely talk about that soon.
And you make a good point, because, like, me, I like my comic book movies and whatnot, and I'm a hard critique of just about everything. But in all my years of watching comic book movies, I can honestly say only like 3 movies has been able to actually support multiple casts. And this is not a knock on Marvel or DC, but both of them have, in my opinion, have not been able to do that before. Because we have one of the reasons that Marvel had their movies, different character all around movies, was to flesh out that character. Because when they got to the big movies where they come together, they struggle giving them all something to do. And that's because, like, for example, the first Avengers, Age of Ultron, perfect example. Because I'm not gonna get on the first Avengers because that's different. Age of Ultron, they had Hawkeye was just kind of there. He didn't really he had his moments, but they didn't give him anything that was worth. If you were to walk into the movie, that's my argument. If you were to walk into the movie and watch this and not know the characters, would it explain who they are? That's my biggest thing. And up to this point, Marvel doesn't have any movies that can flesh out more than 3 movies. And that's the same with DC. Neither one of them can flesh out more than honestly 2 people at a time. And that's just because they focus on who's the money maker in the movie. Not a knock on them. That's just how they do. And because, if you, like, for example, you watch any Marvel movie come together, if it's not focused, if you take Iron Man out of the movie, there's no longer a movie. If you with DC, you take Batman out of the movie, there's no longer a movie, and that's problematic. With this movie, you could have taken out any character, and yeah, it would have lost something, but you would still had a movie. If you took out Black Panther and it was about Killmonger, you would have had a movie. If you made it about Shuri, you would have had a movie. The Dora Milaje, you still would have had a movie. They all had equal parts of this. You could have, if you took out a character, yes, it would pull the movie back a little bit, but you'd still have a full-fleshed movie. And I like that. This is different. You know me. I don't like Marvel movies. I don't, and you know why I don't like them. That being said, I like this because it wasn't like the rest of them. They decided to do something different. Shout out to the director. He did something different. And I like that. I can appreciate that. Appreciate. People call me a hater. I'm not a hater. I'm just a critique. I critique. And if it's a movie that I'm biased against, because I've been accused of being biased for Wonder Woman, I say, I completely agree with you. If I love the character, don't trust my judgment. And this means a lot to me because, as I've said in the last part, I don't really care for Black Panther as a character. But this movie made me care for him as a character. And I like that. I can appreciate that. I will end my note on a positive one and say they did a good job. I kind of want a story about M'Baku because I love M'Baku now. He's my dude. Tay, what you think?
Don't get me started on him because I love me some him. We could do a whole podcast on the dynamic between BP and the women in the film. Because for me, like, one of the things that I love so much is just the family unit and seeing that on screen. It was kind of, let me see. Y'all might be too young, but I remember when, Lord help me, when the Cosby Show came out and why it was so important, things that happened later aside, because it showed a Black family in a positive light. Nobody was doing drugs. Nobody was, there were no teenage pregnancies and anything like that. And I felt that here too, where you had, yes, the father had perished, but you still had that strong family bond especially between T'Challa and Shuri, who was my girl. And I could, like I said, we could do a whole nother podcast just about Shuri.
I love her.
Because, and I think I think her not her addition, but her character is so important because there is this push now for more Black women to enter into the sciences and engineering and mathematics and stuff like that. So having her be the technological head and be as funny as she was and then still be a fighter. I mean, every woman in this film is multifaceted. I mean, every character is, but especially the women. But like I said, we could do a whole nother discussion about that. But that was just something I wanted to touch on quickly because I know we got to go soon.
Completely and wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, we're definitely doing that. Like, we're just going to do a podcast on the characters and the dynamics between the characters. Like, that is definitely underway. So yeah, in, I guess, wrapping this up, Black Panther was a great movie for a lot of reasons, and you're going to get each and every one of those reasons from us in the coming days, weeks, whenever we get people together, whenever we get guests. If you want to say something about Black Panther, definitely hit us up. This is RCR Reviews. We are on Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, iTunes, and probably some other places. And so yeah, see, where can we find you guys? Tay?
You can find me on Twitter at Grown Geek Girl. You can find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Grown Geek Girl, and you can also find me on Facebook, Grown Geek Girl. I'm Grown Geek Girl on all things except for Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Tay 82.
All right, and I am one part of the Emotions and Shh podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Emotions and Shh with 3 H's because we like to be extra. You can find us on there, Instagram under ES Podcast 1. You can also find us on Facebook at the ENS Podcast because they like to censor people because language. And yeah, you can check us out. We're on all places, like RC Reviews. We're on all places you can hear audio, Podbean, Tuned In, iTunes, all that good stuff. Check us out. I would say all the things for Miss Haven Rain, but just go over there. You can check it out. It's always in our links, descriptions, all that good stuff. So yeah, PC outie.